So official. Yeah? Okay. Good morning. Thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us back here at the church. We're so happy to see you again. For yet another Insight Sunday, our program where an artist from our community, from the South Fork community, gives us an up-close and intimate look and exploration of their work in their own words, which is followed by dynamic questions and sometimes even conversation. This week, we're really pleased to welcome Denise Watimo, did I say that correctly? Weedemo Silva-Dennis, who is an artist who's currently featured in our exhibition, Are You Joking? Women and Humor, which is on view upstairs. If you haven't seen the exhibition, we encourage you to see it at the end of this talk. My name is Sherry. I'm the executive director here, and on behalf of our co-founders and all of the team, we'd like to welcome you and Denise to the church this morning. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love visiting the church, and it's amazing to be here and to talk about my work. So I want to say, first of all, akwe is hello in our language, and then tampak means friends. And there's friends and families here as well. So my name is Denise Silva-Dennis, and you pronounce it Weedemo. And my grandmother on my father's side gave me that name, Grandma Silva. And I'm from the Silva Arrow clan, not only of Shinnecock, but also the Hassanamisco Nation, which is up in Grafton, Massachusetts. So I'm a visual artist and beadwork artist, an educator, and an activist. Jeremy, I don't know if you wanted to add to that. You're good. I'm good. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. A few minutes ago, he said he's going to add, but that's okay. I'm wearing my regalia today, and I wanted to wear that because not only am I a painter and drawer and my multidiscipline, but also a beadwork artist. And my mother would always say, you make sure that wherever you present, you tell people that I was your first teacher. And that's where Ma's House comes in, where Jeremy founded Ma's House on the Shinnecock Nation, which is a BIPOC art center now, and that's where both of us grew up. My family with brothers and sisters. My dad built the house, and my mom's from the Shinnecock side, so it was her allotment there on Shinnecock. And with the regalia that I'm wearing in that piece, there's a lot of wampum in there, and that's, tells a story of the Shinnecock people and how we have always been known as wampum makers of this area, and that comes from the Quahog shell. Land back butter. Thank you. So with land back butter, I love that butter. I love the Land O'Lakes butter, I should say. And growing up, my parents would always in the local food stores buy Land O'Lakes butter to go with bread and butter. And so with a Native American woman on it, I always knew where to go and get that butter because that was the only butter that had any kind of Native person in the whole entire store, in the AMP or Bullhacks. Those are the stores back then that we used to shop at. And so I said, maybe one day I'll draw something like that, as a child, but never really thought more about it. As you can see in the, or maybe you can see in the bottom, I signed it Weedemo, and that's from 2021. So here's one of the originals. And with this Land O'Lakes version, it's the native, is like in red, white, and blue, like very patriotic, and I'm like, I think mine needs to have an eagle feather in there. And they have some big, looks like beads, which are red and blue, very patriotic again. And I'm like, I need to have a wampum shell in mine. And then in the regalia, I made it more so leatherwork. But then when you look at the facial expression, well, this Land O'Lakes person is very happy and made up and whatnot. I don't know if her headband is that authentic as far as a design, not so much. And so the expression on mine is not very happy because she wants her land back. But it makes it approachable. You know, sometimes when you say, well, I'm going to be doing a talk about getting land, well, no, who wants to hear about what do they mean they want to get their land back? But by having it as almost like a comedy, like, oh, yeah, I get it. It looks like, that's kind of funny that you put butter in there. And so to go along with that, I was thinking, as you have, as we were coming into Sag Harbor and seeing various people going to the different places to get their, bagels or getting their breakfast, I'm like, maybe they could have a little land back butter to go along with those bagels this morning. And this is what happened in 2020 during the COVID. All of a sudden, there was no Native woman on there. Like, what the heck happened? Why is there that O there? Gone. And of course, where do you find out, like, what the heck happened? If you could even get to the store during COVID, right, to purchase anything. You're lucky if you could get any kind of food, and certainly not towels and toilet paper. That was completely gone. But then that's inspired me during that time to go ahead and put that Native woman back in there. And I know, that during all of this time about cultural appropriation and problems with that. And so I took that into account, but that's why I made the Native, in my version, much more, relatable, and to talk about and to view, some of the work that I had been doing anyway, because I'm also part of what's called the Nyamuck Land Trust, Graves Protection Warrior Society. Now I'm on also the Peconic Land Trust as well, all about preserving the land, and all about, well, who are the first people? Whose land? Who were the stewards? Who took care of that land? So that's a whole conversation to go into just by looking at a painting, just to go and layer it or peel it away. What is the underlying story there? Well, the underlying story of land here on our beautiful island are all some of the original tribes. This is 13, but there were so many, many more. And each nation, it didn't really have that type of border, those lines, because we were all interrelated before colonial contact. So everyone would go from here to there, cross through. If you were from Montauk or Montaukett, that means the fort area. And so Shinnecock and Montaukett, we still have so many people who are both. Shinnecock and Uncachog, both. The lineage goes all throughout, even with the Korchog still to this day, and Setauket. So it's really originally family groups. And along the South Shore, Montauk, Shinnecock, Uncachog, and Secretog, and some of the others, Matinecox, were also whalers and taught the first colonists how to whale. And it was not called Long Island. It was called Siwanhaki or Sawanica, and Siwan means the different shells. Siwan is shells, and Haki or Aki means land. So the original name for this area for more than 10,000 years was Siwanhaki or Siwanica, the island of the shells. And that's another reason why the wampum is so important, because the beads were made for trade, the beads were made to tell a story, and later, during colonial times, wampum was a type of currency. It was the first currency in the United States. Well, it wasn't even the United States. It was still under England. But that was the value. Coins from Europe didn't mean anything to the indigenous people, but the beads certainly would have. And if you want to know how to find out who were the original people in your area, then you can go to this map, and it tells you anywhere in the world where the original people were, and it might tell something about any treaties that may have been made, and a little bit of history about it. I think it's called native dash land or slash something. It's native land, and then there's like a punctuation mark in between. And there you can see where Shinnecock goes, just about to Eastport, going all the way to the Peconic and all the way to the Shinnecock Bay, and then bordering on the Montauk area. And then our little, let's see if I could get this little, I know there's a little pointer, so. Oh, okay. So here's where the reservation is now, but we like to call it our territory instead of reservation, even though it was one of the first reservations in the United States. And then if you just go a little bit over here in this area, that is called Sugarloaf, and that's one of the most important places where our people are buried, and we were able to get that back. I'll tell you a little bit more about that and how that occurred. And then this doesn't show the canal, because the canal probably wasn't even dug out at that point by Shinnecock people. But over here is Westwoods, and right around in there where Sunrise Highway is what we call our memorial, where our advertisements are. You know, some people say, oh, they're the bulletin boards or the advertisements. But for Shinnecock, it's like, those are our memorial towers to show you, hey, you're coming on to Shinnecock land. In case you didn't know, we're still here. And that's how we look at it. This is a cover of one of the powwow programs that I did back in 1995. And the top and bottom show the wampum belts that include the turtle. And the turtle is part of the creation story. And it's about the sky woman who fell down by mistake through a hole in the sky. And birds saw her falling. She was going to fall into the ocean. It's when, great floods. And even in the Bible, it talks about the great floods. And that's part of a lot of the Native American creation stories as well. There's so much water everywhere. And so the birds brought the woman down to the back of the turtle. And so the turtle and the woman became friends. Luckily, in her pouch, she had seeds from corn, beans, and squash, but she had no soil to bury the seeds on and start growing them. So little water animals went down to the bottom of where she was had landed in the water, and were able to gather some type of soil to bring back to her. And then the turtle got bigger and bigger and bigger, and they became friends, and they traveled. And then sometimes you'll hear different creation stories that will be about Turtle Island and how Canada and North America down to Central America is all called Turtle Island. But that's just one origin story, and they vary from place to place. In the Southwest, there's other stories in other areas, and they differ a little bit. But that's part of ours. And of course, we were always whalers, so the men were busy and dug out canoes. Those were the traditional roles of the community, and the women were busy keeping the land in order, keeping the villages in order. It was always the women who decided, this is where we're going to do our summer camp, this is where we're going to be doing the planting, this is where we're going to be preparing the meals and the food from the whale. And then the wampum was used because dialects were so different with the languages of so many different nations of people, that the wampum strings would tell the story. It might have said, okay, we have this whale coming in, we want to invite all our different people. It could be people from the north or further from the west, and we're going to invite you to come and have a nice time with us down here on Shinnecock. And I mean, we still continue that tradition today with our Shinnecock powwow. That never went away. We have always been welcoming, and actually Labor Day weekend, we're going to have a powwow, which is open to the public. It's one of the rare times that the reservation is open, and it's always been a family-oriented place where many, many tribes come in, many nations of people come from Canada, Central America, South America, and all across Turtle Island to visit. And the vendors, there's over 100 different vendors with their wares, and there's all types of dancing and all types of food, so it's really a wonderful event. If you can make it one of those days, you're very welcome to join us. This is one of the projects that I had done on our community center, and it shows the corn mother planting the corn, beans, and squash. And I did this as a project with the educational program on Shinnecock. And the whole idea of it was, let's get the community together to be more advocates for their children, to be more involved as they go to the school district, and what can we do together as a group to kind of bond and to talk and come out and socialize. So I did the plan for this part of this mural, and it's pretty long. I forget how. It's pretty tall and pretty long on the community center, and then that's just one of the sections that shows our beach. And at that time, I was one of the founders of the Shinnecock Women's Group. This is when Jeremy, he was just maybe 1 year old. So now that mural needs actually to be replaced or painted over. Now it's kind of fading away, but it was a chance for the children to play on our playground. We had the women's group at that time were looking for funding to restructure our playground. It had fallen to disrepair, so a legislative grant had come from Senator Laval at that time, and so we were able to build a playground, and then there was something missing. It was just a brick wall, so then I did a historical mural with the educational families to for the kids to learn about their history as they played. And then this is something that's fairly new. This was a sketch that I had done in preparation for a mural that I, thank goodness, finished up for the Cold Spring Harbor Museum, Whaling Museum in Cold Spring Harbor. And again, it shows all the different nations and relatives of people, where they lived, and some different artifacts that I incorporated in this particular sketch. And it just shows where different things have been actually found in that area when it was being developed in Merrick. This was a piece, and it could have been a part of a necklace, a pendant that was worn, that was found. And then another thing the Shinnecock people have always been known for are wood carvings of different kinds of shorebirds and ducks as well. And a lot of those wood carvings were actually used in the water to attract ducks, for hunting purposes. And then where the Unkachogs are, I have some eel traps here. And then all around, there's little wigwams or wickiups where people would have lived. So the people, the ancestors, would have lived close to any of the water or any of the fresh water all around, mostly around the coastal areas, or like I said, streams. There's a little scallop here, little basket there that someone made, and then all the way out there to the Montaukets, and then of course there's the Manhassets. They had their island, which is now, that's Gardner's Island, I believe, and then we had the whale. But some people, at the Cold Spring Harbor Museum, when I did this original sketch, they said, well, a lot of children come in, so it might be a little scary for them to actually see the harpooning of the whale. So I had to change it around. So if you ever go to the Cold Spring Harbor Museum and hey, I don't see those tools being used, I don't see the harpoons, that's why, because it would be too much for the kids. I didn't show any blood. I didn't do anything like that. But I don't know. As an educator, I'm like, why can't children or anyone else know this was for survival? This wasn't just for trophy. This wasn't a violent act. And then tell the story that offerings were made after the hunt. Thankful. You're thankful to that whale for providing for your community, for providing for, your guests that you're having coming. And there will always be a ceremony with the fin and the tail of the whale. And just to be thankful to the Creator and to thank the whale for sacrificing its life. So there's so much more than just, violence and killing. That's not the whole story. But I guess that will have to be in another mural one day. That's that part of it. Oh, sorry, this is a little fuzzy. But this is, just gets under my last nerve. This photo that you can still go ahead and, if you Google Shinnecock people, and that won't be one of the first things that pops up. This photo, and it is of Shinnecock people, and they are in Shinnecock Hills, and I believe it's a ceremony, or it's supposed to be a celebration of the Long Island Railroad going in. But I don't see anybody in the foreground smiling about it at all. They knew that it had crossed through, the sacred burial grounds, that Long Island Railroad, when it came through in 1859. And so some people there also helped to build it, because by that time so much of the land had been taken. People were not, by 1884, the whaling industry, the whales were almost extinct from these areas. So I know a lot of the whalers had to go to the North Pole on the ships and the South Pole, and they were often first mates. But the people who were here to supposedly celebrate, and then, to have injury, to have someone write the last of the Shinnecock Indians. But as you can see, there's a little girl there. Let me go back. There's this little girl here. So are you saying she's the last one? And there's many, many more family members. This is just a little, snapshot of some of the Shinnecock people. Shinnecock people live all over the world. There's people who live in Australia. There's probably people who live, I don't know, there's somebody in Antarctica right now. There's people all over the place who are doing some film, and all over America, North America, South America. You could find Shinnecock people anywhere, and especially because we were whalers, and some people decided, hey, I like Tonga, and I'm going to stay here, and I fell in love with somebody here, and there's a whole family there who recently actually wrote to the Sag Harbor Historical Museum and said, hey, my great-great-great-grandfather was a Lee, and I know he's from Shinnecock, and can you connect me with the people from Shinnecock? So you never know. Our stories are just really amazing, and where the people are. But what I did is I just got so sick of this photograph that I did my own painting, and I incorporated the people there. And this little girl, I wanted to focus on that little girl, and she's in orange. And that's what was happening at the time and I renamed it, not the last of the tenacious Shinnecock Indians, because if anybody holds on to anything on Turtle Island, on Sewanaka, it sure is a Shinnecock, because we have managed to hold on to our, not a lot, but our acreage that we still have. So it's funny, just the other day, someone came and visited Ma's house, and this woman had said, oh, you guys have to, you have to speak up more and let people know what's happening. I'm like, well, yeah, well, that's what we're doing here at Ma's house. But, you have to have people listen. You have to have people. So thank you, everybody, for coming to listen today. We consider that allyship. So anyway, going back to that little girl, when I painted this, That was when so many children were being found who had been taken away to boarding schools, and there were all these unmarked burials of children who were in boarding schools across Canada, and so many in like North Dakota and the Canadian border. Those were the first ones that came into the news, but there were many more. And there's children who were sent away from Shinnecock too. Little children, little 5-year-olds, little 4-year-olds, babies. And they were taken to the Thomas Indian School. That's in upstate New York. And some never made it back. And we also did have a project with a traveling museum from the people, the Seneca people. Thank you to Holly for making that connection, cousin Holly in the audience, for making that connection and having that show about the information with the Thomas Indian School. And then people from Shinnecock said, oh, my grandparents, they also went there. And oh, I have letters and I have pictures from them and little mementos and little memories. So, you know, in a painting, it just makes it so much easier to approach. You know, what is that about? Why is that there? And I guess I'm a little feisty by saying not the last of the tin. That's my humor, anyway. I always have to have some kind of statement in there. But the background is from a 1797 Department of Transportation survey. It says General Land Map, and it's in Albany, and it's in the Shinnecock Indian Book. And when John Strong, Professor John Strong, and Gaynell Stone had written their book called Shinnecock Indians, I believe they were the ones, their team are the ones who found that map. So this isn't a Shinnecock. We didn't create this map. Southampton created that map. And where Hetty Creek is, you know, they wrote that in. We didn't do that. Indian Line goes out to Bullhead, Sabonic Neck, all the way to the Peconic, and that's before the canal was dug out as well. So that's the 3,600 acres, and it also has this little tiny drawing of Sugarloaf Hill in the original map, and it looks like there's a little person in there to me, you know, showing that that is our burial ground. It was always regarded as that. This is Sugarloaf, Ushpamoak, that place above. In 2022, we were able to work with Peconic, well, it was Neomak Land Trust, and even before that, it was Graves Protection Warrior Society, members of the Shinnecock, and also the Unkechild, Matinecock, Montaukett people who, you know, were, you know, concerned about burial grounds and how, you know, more and more areas in the Shinnecock Hills, or really all the Shinnecock Hills, are being dug up. And that was happening because of COVID and so many people coming from the city and trying to find, you know, a safe place to go, and builders were investing and grabbing up Shinnecock Hills. But all this time, we've always said Shinnecock Hills is a burial ground. Shinnecock Hills Golf Course is a burial ground. There's still people buried there. This still remains in New York City museums with our people that we are trying to repatriate, and we are trying to get them as close as they were taken out of Shinnecock Hills. I mean, this was years ago when they were dug up in the 20s and the 30s. But what happened here, this is this is based on hope that you had given Neomak Land Trust one of the postcards and shown us that you had collected that. So I transformed it into a color version. I think it was already colorized. And so then I put the different spirits of some of our ancestors. So over there, on that side, that's Princess Noadana. That was one of our historians and cousins, an elder cousin. She was a teacher on Shinnecock. She always wore her regalia. So whenever I wear my regalia to an event, or to a talk, I always think of Princess Noadonna because she always had on that regalia. And she would say, even though she was in her, I think maybe 70s or 80s, well, I don't think she quite made it into her 80s, but she was still teaching through the Shinnecock Native American Cultural Coalition, SNAC. And as a teenager, I remember being in the community center with all the children there. Or we were like teens, and she said, I couldn't do it in my time, but it's up to you children. You go back and you get those Shinnecock Hills, because those Shinnecock Hills were taken. And they were taken illegally, which they were. It was it was Southampton Town, and one day Southampton Town needs to say, yes, we did this, and yes, it was wrong, and you misled all the people generations later by saying, oh, this is clear land for the taking. It's not. It was forged signatures, a forged instrument, and the Shinnecock people protested it, but at that time we weren't even considered citizens of the United States like all Native Americans until 1924. So you couldn't even go into a court really and protest anything. You'd just be thrown out. So we lost those 3,600 acres, but we were able to get this piece back, and it's still in negotiations right now with the Peconic Land Trust. John Halsey, Josh Halsey, Matt Swain have been in leadership with that, and the team there, Kathy Kennedy, I believe, she was a big part of it, and their leadership. Actually, I'm part of that too, so I've joined Peconic Land Trust as well. Also, there's land to the left of it. You can't see it in this painting, but it's called Sillerman land, and with the help of Roger Waters, we were able to get that back, and also the Southampton Town, what is it called? Community Preservation Fund. So it's CPF, and that's 2% real estate tax. Whenever there's any kind of real estate transaction in the town of Southampton, it's supposed to go to saving farmland, saving cultural heritage areas, and just in the natural beauty, to put it aside for everyone to always enjoy. And a lot of times people think that Peconic Land Trust gets that CPF money, and they don't. They have to raise their money on their own, but it's the same mission to save land, especially for farmers. And so our little Neomuk Land Trust and our Graves Protection Warriors Society, we're like, hey, what about the original people? What about our people who are still buried? What about the people we need to bring back from these museums who are put in boxes and thrown in sheds somewhere? What about those original people? What are you going to do about it? So that was, that's something that's a daily trial and tribulation. And if you ever pass through Montauk Highway, well, I know some of you here will be out there with us, but a lot of times, we're there with our little, signs and trying to make the town of Southampton accountable. I mean, I didn't live during that time, and the people, among us, they didn't live during that time who were standing there. And those people who made those decisions decades and decades ago are not here with us. But yet, what happened to the people now? And, we can't go into our hills anymore. It's private property. You can't go and hunt anymore. You can't go and fish in the waters. So something needs to be done. And, hopefully one day, maybe with this new elections, maybe that will help. Hopeful that we have a new supervisor. So then we have also, that's one of the chiefs, Kellis. That's from a photograph of him. I think it was like a 4th of July parade. And that was another thing. We're always very patriotic. A lot of us are always in the 4th of July parade. And as a matter of fact, this year, the Shinnecock people, I believe, had 3 floats and won the Mayor's Award, because there's so many people who have served in every single war to defend, because we're like, this is our land, so we need to, protect it. And then this one is one of the Cuffies, and he was also known as Eagle Eye as well, and Wickham Cuffy, and they said they named him Eagle Eye because he was a whaler and he could see the whales far off in the distance. And then the last one is Romaine Kellis, and that is from a portrait of her that goes along with her brothers, and I believe it's from the Wanamaker collection. Back in the early 1900s, a photographer came out and took portraits of the Shinnecock people. So I just wanted to combine those different people because they had the memory of where people were buried. They would have had the memory of maybe their grandparents told them about the Shinnecocks who lived near in the wigwams. And that was another thing about Wickham Cuffy. He was the first one in the 1800s, they say, who was actually born in a house and not in a wigwam. And here is the house that was once on top of Sugarloaf. This house was built in 1990, and they knew that they were building on that sacred burial ground, and they still went and had a pool dug out, and it's quite a big mansion, but it's all gone now. It was taken down, yay. And it's a magnificent piece. You could see the Peconic from there, where the photograph would be, hovering. That would be Shinnecock Bay, and then you can see beyond to the ocean. So they say that it's a crematorium as well, and that's why the whole area is so sacred, because it's people were like a crematorium where bones were prepared there. So now we go there and we visit. It's not a place to have a trail. That's what like Southampton Town was like, oh, well, we want to have a trail going through there and public access. It's a cemetery. It's unmarked graves. But the reason why this house was allowed to build there is because in New York State there was no protection. New York State was one of, I believe, either 3 or 4 states in the whole United States that had no protection for unmarked graves. And that's not only Native American graves, that's also Revolutionary War people. That could be people who were enslaved who had burials and burial graves. So if you happen to be, digging your house, or your builder was digging it and they came upon some graves, just throw them in the garbage. Don't say anything to anybody. And that's what happened. I remember my mom had a newspaper article, because she was always looking and reading, and one said she saved it, and it was when a grave was found in Korchog, and the title said, Injun, I-N-J-U-N, grave found. And it was like a big deal. It was like collecting, like how kids would collect cards, baseball cards, like, oh, let's go get those graves, let's go get those skulls, let's go get those arrowheads and collect them. But it was a thing in America. Put that skull on your mantle and talk about it. And it's still a thing where we have to go to dental. We're getting repatriated with like these dentists who had skulls for study. We have gotten bones back from a South Pole Indian Museum that has like numbers on it and categories, or there was one piece that had mother and child that were found on the North Shore, and they were kind of glued together on a display. And it was in Southampton Historical Society for many, many years. And it was John Strong and David Martine back in the 90s who also protested that. And John Strong, Southampton College is just east of where this house was, and he told them that, this is wrong. This is a burial ground, leave it alone. But, permits were granted. And in Southampton, I know, money talks. You do what you want. You just pay it. And if you do break some kind of permit, if you do something wrong, you just pay the fee. That's all. But like I said, it's good that this is now preserved back to where it was. And I had to put Kelly in there and Tila and Jeremy in there because even though, I'm a seasoned teacher and studied the history and artists, I was inspired because of the work that they have done. And with Jeremy, doing his different historical work and interviewing so many different people, anthropologists, archaeologists, the elders, photography, finding out the original names of the places, doing his mapping work through on this site, that helps me inform me of my paintings and what's important and what needs to be retaught. And then with Kelly and Tila, the work that they've done and the studies they have done in their law schools, they had special Native American studies where they learned all about contracts and just all about the history of what has happened in the past. They had one of the interesting things they both talked about in their special areas was how the Southampton town and the Shinnecock people had to negotiate over seaweed. And I never heard of anything like that. Like seaweed was this big thing, and then it was all about whales and negotiating about these drift whales, the right whale, with Cooper, Decatur Cooper, and where Cooper's Beach, one year it was the #1 beach, in Southampton. I think it went down to #3 in the United States. But there's all these old historical documents that talk about Shinnecock and how this was really, Shinnecock land. And as an activist, there's Tila in the town of Southampton, and it's showing that even back in the 90s, when that house was being built, a fort was also found in Shinnecock Hills, and it was a protected area, and it was actually Southampton town who protected it. But moving forward 30 years ago, the people currently serving, they have no idea. They don't know that there's burials. And when we've gone into the town meetings to discuss it, and the public time, they're like, "What? What are you talking about? We didn't know." But you're one of the town members. You're a historian. Why don't you know? Why isn't that part of what you should know about the town that you're serving, and all the people, not just some of the people? And as I said, sometimes you'll see us, and that's some of the artwork, that I've done. They've taken everything and then stopped the desecration of Shinnecock Hills. We just really want it protected. We just don't want any more new houses to go in, because we know that you're going to find somebody. You're going to dig up someone, just like on Hawthorne Road. Someone was actually dug up. And luckily, they were friends with my cousin Becky and called her up and said, I know you're on Graves Protection. You better come out here because, we mistakenly dug up someone. And so then that was this big negotiation with the town of Southampton. They didn't want to buy it. They didn't want to protect it because they said it's too little land. We want to, when we make purchases, we want it to be farmland, like open farmland, not these little, plots of land that are less than an acre. So we really had to fight for that. And also, I think Jeremy had set up a GoFundMe to help fund that. And then we did get a lot of private donations once people knew what was happening. But this is just a few years ago, when on Montauk Highway, And we had done, Kelly and I had actually done, when will we get our Shinnecock Hills back? And it says, Noah Donna, Lois Marie Hunter, because that goes back to what she was teaching us. And that we made that during the U.S. Open because we went in, because it was going to be national news about the, big time U.S. Open with golfing, that we'd have all the cameras. So let's just say, okay, here's the Shinnecock people. Don't forget about us. Our people are the ones who helped to dig out that Shinnecock Hills golf course, by the way, because there were no other jobs around. So they had to participate in that. But, we do work also with a Southampton town attorney. He's very good. Burke, I forget his first name, but he's really good at helping us negotiate. And I hope, soon we do not have to go and stand out there on Montauk Highway, that something is done permanently to stop. Because what's happening is there's little houses in the woods there, and then they're taken down, and then these giant houses are being put in there. And as you can see, the Southampton Town police officers are in the back. And when we unfurled that big banner, there was a conflict going on, and Avery and I was standing, my husband and I was standing there, and we didn't really know that there was a lot of pushback. And so the current owners of that property were like, you can't block the builders going in and out. So here we come innocently, this is a good open spot. Let's open it up right here. So, and then that photo was taken. But it's something that everyone needs to learn. Like the police officers, they have no idea. They just think that we're out there starting trouble. They don't know why we're there. So everybody needs to be educated, including the town of Southampton, which we're trying to do with them as well. This is on top of Sugarloaf, and this was when we were finally able to negotiate. Tila is all the way on the end. She was huge in negotiating with the town and working with a town attorney. And then in the background is Shinnecock Bay, and then that's where the mansions are on that Dune Road. You can see past them as well, and you can see to the inlet. And this is me with my quiet self and signs, just protesting. This was during the U.S. Open. Stolen land, stolen name, stolen image, but you can't ever silence. That's not ever going to happen. Oh, there's Tom. I think Tom's in the audience. Heidi, I'm sure you're back there where it says Native Nations Fights Billionaires. And then this is another. This is Wune Oke, and it means good ground, and that's the original name for Hampton Bays. And that's where our people were. A lot of our people, a lot of our areas where the wigwams were and wickiups were there. And right where Rumba is, if you ever go to Rumba, that restaurant, and you go out on the deck, and then you look to the north, and then you see that sandy beach, and that road is called Canoe Place. And you could just almost picture those canoes just lined up in your mind's eye. So I worked with Brianna Hernandez and Corinne Ernie from the Parish Art Museum as a roadshow artist. And we were trying to find a place in Hampton Bays where I could do one of my murals. And so luckily the Sisters of St. Joseph were able to work with us, who also have the Shinnecock kelp farmers there on the grounds where they're raising sugar kelp. And so they had a spot on one of their dormitories where I could do a 2-story high mural. And before that, it was all kind of scaffolding involved. And so we just wanted to show, we're coming back to good ground. We're coming back to some of our original areas where we have always been. Part of it shows where there's still a chapel in Hampton Bays or Good Ground, and the other part was moved over. That's when Shinnecock Bay used to be fresh water. and now it's salt water because of the inlet. But it froze stiff, so you could move houses back then. And then Niamuk, for Niamuk, that means to lift up canoes and carry them, portage them across. Of course, you don't have to do that anymore because you have the canal. But we still have people buried over there as well. So it's just to bring awareness. And then the little boy, that little baby, that's little Benjamin. That's a great nephew. And that's Tila's son, Tila and Matt's son. And so he's the future. This is where, we're going back to where this is what we're reclaiming again. This picture is at Hawthorne, and this was where the remains were mistakenly dug up. I believe that it was a family who owned this particular piece of land, and there was an agreement with the family to never build, just leave that section wild and don't ever build it. But I guess almost all the family members had passed away, or they weren't in the way anymore of it, so they went ahead and sold it. People have to sell things sometimes, and as soon as they started digging, that's when they found someone. But like I said, it was my cousin. This is Becky right here. The builders just happened to be friends with her, and they called and said, oh, we have found. They said they found a bottle. And you see where all of this is? They just thought everything was just roots until they saw a bottle. And what's this bottle doing here? And then they went to investigate, and then this skull and bones fell out of the side. Right up below, that's to protect them. And so actually the person who found it actually owns a bottle company. I think it's Montauk Bottle, the drinks. And they're like, wait, there's this old bottle down here. And so that's when they found it. And so the other guy who owned the property said, come on, it's raining, and let's just get this job done. What are you doing? Come on, guy. And he's like, no, we got to get this bottle. It's below these roots. So then Becky had called me up, and I had just gotten with her with the Graves Protection Warrior Society, activated with that. And she said, oh, it happened again. They found a body. And so I went there, and I asked Jeremy to come along with me. And a detective showed up, this young detective. And he said, I don't think this is old. I think that this is fairly new, because there's this bottle. Why would it be ancient? And so Jeremy had done, he has on this site, and he held up his cell phone, and he said, is this what the bottle looked like? And the guy was like, oh, yes. And it's like it's called an onion bottle, and it's from colonial times, and it was used to trade. And it was from like the 1600s or 1700s. And so he was taken aback. But then as more and more people came, more and more detectives, Southampton Town Police showed up, then they said, this is MS-16. This is a murder scene. And we're like, no, it's not. We've been trying to tell everybody this is where our ancient burials are. It's not MS-16. How can you have MS-16 and you have something below all these roots? It's like crazy. But, we were able to get that person out, and they said it was somebody 50 years older, and then this was around powwow time in 2018, and we were able to have a little gathering there just to respect who was buried there. By this time, they were already taken to the medical examiner, but we know that there's never just one person buried anywhere. There are going to be more. So after a whole lot of struggle, we were able to protect that land with the community preservation funds and our own fundraising as well. So that is protected now. And then I just spend time, doing different talks. This is with our Niamuk land trust that we were able to put together. It's Becky, and that's Holly in the audience, Tila, myself, and Jen. Where's Jen? Right there. She wanted to be here today. But this is a BOCES group. So we tell BOCES about, they're interested. They want to know so they can reteach about land acknowledgement and about the land and the Shinnecock people. Or sometimes I'm at the Long Island Children's Museum doing projects there. Well, so I like to relate, it's not only about the land, but it's about the water. So I teach the children about how the water song, Nibi Wabo Endayan, Aki Nisqui, Nibi Wabo, Heya, 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 Hey, Heya, 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 Ho. And that's an Algonquin song, and that means the mother is our earth and the blood. The water is the blood of the earth, and we need to protect it. And just being part of the Peconic Land Trust is just so important, and working with John, it's Tila again, and myself. And that's ways to give to the Shinnecock Land Acquisition and Stewardship Fund there to not only protect, our local heritage, but even before that, 10,000 years is still heritage here. And so that shows a partnership. That's going to be in our powwow program, actually, in partnership with the Peconic Land Trust. And actually, Holly inspired that with the 2-row of wampum, where we have our ways, you have your ways. We can work together and find balance and live peacefully with each other. And then here's where the Shinnecock kelp farmers. You see them in there. Yeah, so there's myself, and there's Danielle. I'm a board member. I'm not a kelp farmer. I always let everybody know. This is the kelp farmers, Danielle. She's here in the audience, and Darlene, and Becky, Donna, Tila, and that's our sister Carrie. She's always out there in the water, so she might as well be a kelp farmer as well. But that's over at the villa in Hampton Bays, and that's also where the mural is. And that's the end. Thank you.
I believe we would like to open it up for any questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Wondered for you, when you saw that the Native American was taken off the Land O'Lakes, did that seem something, since it was a happy thing in your childhood, that wasn't good, or was it good because you felt they were appropriating the Native American culture? Which way did you feel about that?
I'm a Libra, so I'm like, I can understand the appropriation and like the whole mascot problem, But to me, to be a child and just, because I didn't see that anywhere else where a Native American was somewhere and not forgotten, to me it was important to bring her back. Her name was Mia from the original picture, and to bring her back and to make it appropriate, even though it had been appropriated. And to put land back on there. I just Googled it because that was all during COVID anyway, and I read that the reason why the new CEO took it off is because they really wanted to highlight the farmers and the work of the farmers and the cows, and so get rid of the Indian and keep the land. And that's what my daughter said, get rid of the Indian, keep the land there. But that was the reason why it was done. Yes. In a way, if you can do things on the correct terms, on terms where you reach out to indigenous communities and ask them, what do you think? Maybe my opinion is just it's my opinion, but maybe someone else from my nation, they might have something different. But as an artist, and I'll say artistic license, then that's how I, approach it. But, I also do talks about, with mascots to places like BOCES. And, then we go into this whole thing about the way that mascots have been presented, and with, people still dancing like, woo, 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 and a headdress that has like fake eagle feathers on it. And it's just such an ignorant way of looking at a culture. It's not real. It's just a cartoon character. And so it needs to be corrected, So that's just important. Education is just extremely important, and you're not going to learn about it in the school, like in the Southampton School District, unless an individual teacher in their classroom or maybe a grade level of teachers try to, just make it more realistic. But I know in our district in Southampton, growing up for many years, we'd always have a Thanksgiving dinner in second grade, a luncheon, and everyone used to bring in, food from home. And then it just turned, because there's so many allergic reactions, they had to have things catered in. But, it was a nice gathering, but then the knowledge came that didn't really happen that way. Thanksgiving did not happen that way with the Wampanoag people. There's a whole nother story. And I know that one of the teachers who was teaching second grade at the time, who's married to a Shinnecock man, taught her kids in the classroom, this is not the real story. We're going to have this gathering, with the rest of the classes, but here's what the real story is. And so parents were very upset, because some parents, not all, and they were like, why did you teach, why are you teaching my child that's not the real story? That's what we always, learned. I learned this from my parents, that it was a peaceful gathering. And, it wasn't peaceful. And to this day, the Wampanoag people do not have a land base. They live, in different communities in Massachusetts, but they do not have a reservation. Everything was taken from them. So, why can't that story be known? Why can't our districts really teach, this is the land of the original people. The original people are still here, and the original people who have managed to stay are in need of help. Just like in 1640 in Southampton, when the first colonists came from Lynn, Massachusetts, and Chief Noah Donna said, you can come. We're going to give you this 8 acres of land to bring your families, and in Southampton, it's right near where the hospital is, and this can be yours, but we're still going to be, if we want to hunt in here, if we want to plant in here, if we want to have a wigwam right where you're going to be, then that's how it's going to be. But it all changed because it was, the conflict of the cultures with land ownership. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Shinnecock Nation is the only tribal nation that has land on Long Island, that actually has territory.
The Shinnecock Nation has our land. It's federal. It's federal now. We were state for a long time, state recognized, but also the Unkachog and Mastic has a small amount of land.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really big.
Do you ever work with the Montaukett Nation in terms of their struggle to be recognized
We
as
do.
still
We reach out to them, but sometimes, they have like different factions of Montaukett, so sometimes that can be difficult. But we have worked with individual Montaukett. Like there was a group of women who said that there were some grave sites that might be in an area, and could, through graze protection. So we'll switch gears. So that's like the business of Graze Protection Warrior Society, where we work with other nations who may not have a land base on Long Island, or they're not federally recognized. Once you become federally recognized, then that gives you access actually to go to museums and say, you know, I want this back, I want burial items back, I want, you know, maybe skeletons, or sometimes it's just skulls back.
Can I ask one more question? Are there more houses on Sugarloaf that should be removed?
No, that was just one on the top. And really, it was a mansion, and that was, the way Sugarloaf is, it just drops down. It's the highest point in Shinnecock Hills. So there really was no room to ever put anything. And for many years, that was only 1990. So for many years, I believe that people knew that that was sacred in the town and did not bother it. They knew it.
Yeah. Can I just say one other thing? Your beadwork is so extraordinary.
Thank you.
I mean, I love your land back piece, but I just wanted to compliment you on your the beadwork you're wearing is just spectacular.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So with this, I'll tell you a little bit about the beadwork, actually. I did this piece for my daughter when she was getting ready to graduate from Middlebury College. And I was still working in the Southampton School District as a teacher. And I'm like, oh, I'll be able to get it done, a lot of it done in the week of February break that year. No, got like this much done. So I had to, keep working that summer. I thought, I'll promise I'll have it done over the summer, which I did. So to be fair and equality, this piece was actually for Jeremy, because I have the two children. So this is actually part of his. I borrow from my children because I never have time for myself, so I have to borrow. But yeah, I did learn to do beadwork, first from my mom. I was about, how old are you? You're 9. I was about your age when I told my mom, I said, Mommy, it's time for powwow's getting close. Could you show me how to do beadwork? So she always had, my parents always had this trunk of, leather and beads, and feathers, and parts of regalia and moccasins. And so we were able to find like this piece of leather and some beads, and that's when she sat down with me that summer, and we started to do beadwork. And then as I got older, so I was about 9 when we started, and I always like to say, and this is something that Sister Kathy had said to us, because Kelly and Jeremy had gone to Our Lady of the Hamptons when they were younger. And she always would say, when kids say that they are interested in something, you do everything you can to help them. Even if you have to go like, I don't have all the money to get this, but I will help you, put maybe half up or something, or I'll help you along the way. It's just so important to help people with their passion, no matter what it is, to me, as an educator, and help them see it through. So, and she said, children start very young, and it's not like, okay, now I'm in high school or now I'm in college, I'm going to decide then. It's like they're deciding when they're 9 years old what they're going to do. They might not do it, but sometimes they have that passion. And it's so great. And thank you so much for, I'm also part of Hampton's Community Outreach. I'm on the board. I see Merit back there. And thank you so much for supporting the art of the children who otherwise would never have the opportunity. And that's what I had on Shinnecock with the Shinnecock Native American Cultural Coalition. And through Princess Thunderbird taught me more ways of doing beadwork. And so I'm just so grateful, and just remember being, very young and just having support like what you're doing for the community is so amazing, and just want to thank you both for that. Mm-hmm.